Now, it is possible for us to locate and delete all of the log files, but one thing that you should note is that log file deletion is very simple. Usually it's a simple rm space log file name, end of story, except for one thing. When I go through and I'm analyzing an attack on a system, something that's going to get my attention more so than anything else is an empty log file. If you go through and delete all the security events to the security event log, and I go look in the registry and find out the security event log is enabled, then I'm going to be very suspicious that someone's cleared the event log. So be aware that missing log files or empty log files can tell just as much about what's happened as log files that are populated with telling information. So a really good strategy would be to doctor the log files so that they look realistic. An example that I've used in the past was to compromise a system using standard credentials that I stole from a different system, stealing all the log files from that system and copying them across the board and doctoring them only to match the host identification information. So what you then see is an investigator going through and will see server A, server B, and server C all show normal log files. Now they might look really close at it and notice that all the log files are identical, but it's definitely a lot better than having logs of my attempts as well as empty log files. But our ultimate goal in all of this is to delete traces of tools and of actions used to compromise that system. So it's important to get past the compromise logging and also understand the logging of tools installations and how those are handled. There's been a lot of scenarios before where I was able to tell a lot about a hacked system by simply looking at the binaries or the source files that were left on there by the hacker. One of the things we want to make note of is avoid replacing system files that are of high value to the operating system. Things like ntOSkernel.exe or various kernel files for the Linux operating system. And the reason for that is if nothing else is going to be logged on the system, it's going to be the system files. They're going to be tracked and monitored very heavily because they're core to the operation of the system. So we want to kind of dance around those, and we want to touch things that aren't going to be noticed as much. So one thing that I've seen done in the past is set up scripts so that if anyone logs onto the system, or if the system is ever rebooted, it will immediately clear all the pertinent information. Definitely one point of interest here is the paging file. The paging file is sort of the holy grail for forensics investigators because it's going to hold all of the most critical information about what's been run and what is currently running on the system. So we want to prevent these forensics investigators from getting the information in that page file, especially if it's going to tell them information about what we've done. So definitely be aware. Registry keys and registry entries are also a very rich source of information. We want to keep track of any keys that we had to modify and reset those or remove them altogether later on down the road before we leave the system. We also want to attempt to disable antivirus where possible. Now, this is kind of a toss-up and is really a point of disagreement between penetration testers because you can choose to use tools and custom compiled programs that don't get detected by antivirus, or you can disable antivirus and upload easier to use tools that allow you to operate faster. Really, this depends on you. One thing that you should note is that disabling antivirus can often give you away. Most large corporations in today's environment have centrally monitoring antivirus consoles, and if one of the servers' application stops responding or is disabled, chances are someone will be notified. And always, even though it may seem like common sense, be aware of what you're doing. Pay very close attention to what you do and how it might affect other components of the system, because ultimately carelessness will be the #1 way to lose a box.